Here's how to play PS2 games on the Xbox Series X and Series S using RetroArch and the PCSX2 emulator. The PS2 is one of my favourite consoles of all time. Graphically it's not aged well, but some games are so fun you forget your eyes are melting into a puddle. Early Gran Turismo, Metal Gear Solid, Beautiful Joe, Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy, Tony Hawk, Devil May Cry, you get the point. And the point of this video is to set up PS2 emulation on the Xbox Series X and Series S using RetroArch. RetroArch or RetroArch? Anyway, if you have it installed already, hooray! If not, watch my installation guide, link in the description, and then pop back. I'll put the kettle on. So, is PS2 gaming on Xbox Series X and S good? Well, you can't do it on PS5 at all, so yeah, that's something. I will say that the experience can be a pain. Other times it's flawless, depends on the game and emulator. In the case of PCSX2, it's been good so far, but there are definitely quirks to overcome. The Lawbit emulators, except those with code that's owned by a company, are legal. It's the downloading games and console BIOSes that is illegal. Emulation is a grey area depending on the country. I will not be linking to any of the bad, naughty stuff. Buy games, support the developer, that's a good policy. Also bear in mind that you will need to buy a £2.19 or equivalent in your currency app from Microsoft, and that it really helps if you like and subscribe to the channel. I found some older PS2 on Xbox Series X and S RetroArch guides on YouTube can be problematic, so stick around if you're struggling. My File Explorer is a file management app for Xbox One that works on the Series X and Series S. It's not free if you obtain it legally, as I just mentioned. If you want to use a free alternative, by all means do it. I just know that My File Explorer works perfectly for the job, as that's what I used. Once downloaded, point to your web browser to the Xbox device portal. This is the remote access URL that starts with 192. And then a load of other numbers. Click Add under My Games and Apps, and then locate the My File Explorer file. Start uploading. If the uploader tool complains it's the wrong format type, click on it and then change the .zip file extension, or maybe .rar, to .appx and try again. This worked for me. The file size is tiny, so this will install rapidly. Once finished, you can load it up on your Xbox Series X or S. More on this in a second. There are some other things you need to prepare, including the PS2 games you want to play. You can burn PS2 discs that you own to a file on your PC and use those, so dig out physical copies and Google a guide on how to do this. You will also need to download the PCSX2 emulator, which is the thing that runs PS2 games within RetroArch. A few guides talk about the installation process, but the option to use PCSX2 sometimes does not show up. So be sure to download the two PCSX2 related files in the video description. Lastly, you will need a PS2 BIOS. Using your own console for this is okay, downloading one is illegal, you have been warned. Visit Google for a guide on how to do this. Ideally, a newer PS2 BIOS is better, as it can help with performance and stability, but supposedly newer versions have their cons too. Lastly, locate the PCSX2 file on your computer and select the Extract Here option on your desktop or wherever you prefer. You can do this by right-clicking on the file, then select Extract Here or Extract To. If you don't see these options, or your trial of WinZip or equivalent is over, go and download 7-Zip. I use it for unzipping compressed files, as it's free and zippy. Now shorten the new folder name to PCSX2. Then open the PCSX2 folder, and then open the BIOS subfolder. Locate your BIOS file or files, and copy and paste in here. Now go back and copy the whole PCSX2 folder to a USB stick. A reasonably new one is probably best, but most should show up once plugged into the Xbox Series X and S. Once you have the PS2 ISO game files, PS2 BIOS, and PCSX2 folder on USB, it's time for the next stage. Disconnect the USB safely using the eject option in Windows 10. Plug the USB into your Xbox Series X or S and open up the My Files Explorer app. You'll need to be in the dev mode to do this, not retail. Then navigate to Removable Storage Devices, Removable Disk, eDrive, and then the file name you chose for the PCSX2 folder. Press Start when hovering over this folder, then click Copy. Now navigate to Isolated Storage, Packages, 1E4CF, then a load of other letters and numbers, Local State, System, and then press Start and select Paste. The PCSX2 file is now where it needs to be. Next up, we need to install the DLL file, the other thing I asked you to download earlier. This is usually the missing step for getting the PCSX2 core to show up in RetroArch. Go to the Xbox device portal in your web browser, then click File Explorer, then Browse. This will bring up some instructions. Go to the File Explorer on your PC and paste the URL on screen. Then enter the username and password to open it. Open the 1E4CF and a load of numbers and letters x64 file, and then open cores. Here you can copy and paste the PCSX2 DLL file. Now close the folder, you no longer need it. So we've got PCSX2 running within RetroArch. Now we want to install PS2 games. Go to the Xbox home screen in developer mode and open the My Files Explorer app. Now navigate to Removable Storage Devices, Removable Disk, eDrive, and then your PS2 games folder or whatever you called it. Press the Start button when hovering over said folder and select Copy. Now click Isolated Storage on the left, then Packages in the file directory up top. Navigate to Packages, 1E4CF, and then a load of other letters and numbers, and then Local State. Create a folder called Games by pressing the three dots over in the top right corner, then click New Folder. Now paste your copied PS2 games into the new games folder or whatever you called it. This can take a while depending on how many games you are trying to copy over. Now load up RetroArch on Xbox Series X or S. Load up your preferred configuration file if you have one. I talk about this in my RetroArch setup guide. Now scroll right to Import Content tab. Then navigate to Manual Scan, Content Directory, Q Drive, and then the file name you chose earlier, and then scan this directory. Then go back to Manual Scan, then System Name, and select Sony PlayStation 2. Then go back to Manual Scan, and then down to Default Core. Select PCSX2 PS2. If you don't see the core here, it's probably because the DLL file was not added correctly or is missing. Now scroll all the way down and press Scan Content, and now your game should be added under a tab called PS2. Sometimes things like settings return to default or disappear in RetroArch, at least they do for me. Just make sure to load up your configuration, try different drivers if the one you usually use fails for a particular game, and ensure your system name, default core, and content tab are set to PS2. A few extra things you can do: press to run a game and then choose the default core as PCSX2. Also, you can add games to the favorites tab if you want to make your faves more prominent. Useful if you have a lot of games on various emulators. Also download thumbnails to see if there are any to make life prettier. In addition, you may need to disable controller vibration on your controller under settings, as PCSX2 can sometimes make your controller vibrate constantly. The software is a work in progress, so be prepared to troubleshoot stuff such as the GTA San Andreas ghosting effect I showed earlier. And that's it. PS2 games should now play on the Xbox Series X and S. Bust out that champagne. If you run into any issues with a specific game, use the internet to see whether a workaround exists. Forums specifically for emulation are a good place to start. I hope you found this how to install PS2 games on Xbox Series X and S guide useful. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did, and recommend PS2 games in the comments. I shall see you in the next video. Take care, bye.